Alchemy, the science of understanding, deconstructing, and reconstructing matter. However, it is not an all-powerful art. It is impossible to create something out of nothing. If one wishes to obtain something, something of equal value must be given. This is the law of equivalent exchange, the basis of all alchemy. In accordance with this law, there is a taboo among alchemists. Human transmutation is strictly forbidden. For what could equal the value of a human soul?
Those words are more than just the foundation of alchemy. They are the heart of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. A story about two brothers trying to fix a mistake, but at the same time, a story about what it means to be human. About love, loss, sacrifice, power, and the lengths people go to for the ones they care about. It's about the beauty and the ugliness of the human spirit. Since it aired, Brotherhood has stood as one of the greatest enemy of all time, not just because of its incredible action and world building, but because of its profound themes that resonate with every one of us. In this video, we'll explore every major theme that makes this series unforgettable, from the harsh truth of equivalent exchange to the scars of war to the quiet strength of family and redemption. Humankind cannot gain anything without first giving something in return. To obtain something of equal value must be lost. These are the first words spoken in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and they set the tone for the entire story. Equivalent exchange is more than just the foundation of alchemy. It's the moral and philosophical backbone of the series. At its simplest, equivalent exchange is about balance, the idea that nothing in the world comes for free, and that everything we gain comes at a cost. For Edward and Alphonse, this truth is learned in the harshest way possible. In their attempt to bring their mother back to life, they break the most sacred taboo of alchemy, human transmutation. The price is devastating. Edward loses his leg, Alphonse loses his entire body, and Edward gives up his arm just to anchor Alphonse's soul to a suit of armor. From that moment, equivalent exchange is no longer just a rule of alchemy to them. It becomes the rule of their lives. Every step they take on their journey to restore what they've lost is shaped by the understanding that nothing can truly replace what was taken from them. But as the series progresses, Edward begins to realize that equivalent exchange isn't the whole story. There are things in life that don't follow such a rigid balance. Acts of kindness, sacrifice, love. Sometimes people give without expecting anything in return, and that's what truly defines humanity. This realization is what allows Edward to finally let go of alchemy itself in the end. In exchange of Alphonse's life, he gives up his ability to perform alchemy forever. It's the ultimate act of acceptance, and understanding that some things are more valuable than power, and some debts can never be fully repaid. In the series, the question of what it means to be human sits at the heart of its story. Over and over, the series compares humanity's weakness with its quiet strength and asks if being human is a curse or a gift. We see this question play out most clearly in the homunculi, created from father's experiments. They are technically perfect beings, strong, immoral, and immune to the weaknesses of human life. But despite all their power, the homunculi despise humanity. They see humans as weak, selfish, and hopelessly flawed. Yet their hatred only reveals their own emptiness. They lack what truly makes life meaningful, which is love, connection, and the ability to grow through struggle. Each one of them is a twisted reflection of humanity's sins, but none of them can truly understand what it means to care for someone else. Then there's Father himself. At one point, he sees himself as beyond humanity, having shed his human form to become a godlike being. But in doing so, he isolates himself completely. His quest for perfection leaves him hollow, and in the end, even his immense power can't fill the void. On the other side of this theme is Van Hoheim. He starts his life as nothing but a slave, an expendable tool to his master. But over centuries of wandering and loneliness, he grows to love humanity, flaws and all. He embraces his morality, chooses to live among people, and even give his life willingly to save them. The same choices define Edward. When he's finally given a chance to become something more, To surpass human limitations, he turns it down. He accepts his humanity, his flaws, and his limitations because he knows that's what gives his life meaning. One of the most powerful and haunting themes of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is the devastating impact of war. The series doesn't shy away from showing how conflict destroys lives, corrupts ideals, and leaves scars that never fully heal. The Ishval Civil War is the most prominent example. On the surface, it's just another battle between nations. But as we see through the eyes of characters like Scar, Mustang, and Riza Hawkeye, it becomes clear that the war was nothing more than a genocide, a calculated extermination of an entire people under the guise of national security. Scar's entire family and culture is wiped out, leaving him consumed by hatred and revenge. He becomes a symbol of how violence breeds more violence, and how cycles of hatred can continue endless if no one chooses to break them. For Mustang and his team, Ishval is the moment that shatters their innocence. They carry out orders believing it's their duty as soldiers, only to realize they've become pawns in a political game that cost thousands of innocent lives. Mustang's guilt over his actions fuels his determination to change the corrupt system that gave those orders in the first place. Even Riza, usually calm and composed, is haunted by what she saw and did during the war. The burden of her memories is a quiet but constant reminder of how war dehumanizes everyone it touches. Not just the victims, but the perpetrators as well. The series doesn't portray war as heroic or glorious. It shows it as tragic, a failure of humanity to resolve its conflict without destroying itself. And it asks hard questions. How far would you go to follow orders? How much of your humanity are you willing to sacrifice for peace? By the end of the story, characters like Scar and Mustang choose to break the cycle. They work towards rebuilding Ishval and creating a more just world. The series explores how power can shape people and how easily it can corrupt them. From fathers' godlike ambitions to the smallest acts of cruelty by soldiers and politicians, the series shows that unchecked power rarely leads to anything good. Father himself is the clearest example of this theme. Once nothing but a small, formless creature trapped in a flask, Father gains knowledge and power through manipulation. But no matter how much he takes, it's never enough. Even after absorbing the souls of an entire nation, even after becoming nearly omnipotent, he still feels empty. His power only fuels his arrogance and his contempt for humanity. And in the end, it leaves him alone and defeated, undone by the very people he dismissed as weak. King Bradley, the embodiment of wrath, also illustrates how power twists people. As Führer of Amesteris, he is feared and respected, but behind his calm, commanding facade, he is a puppet of Father's grand design. He's granted immense strength and near immortality, yet he spends his life serving someone's ambitions, not his own. The military itself is another reflection of this corruption. Commanders sacrifice thousands of lives to maintain control, exploiting fear and prejudice to keep the people divided and obedient. Even well-meaning soldiers like Mustang early on find themselves complicit in atrocities because the system rewards obedience over morality. But the story doesn't just condemn power outright. It also shows that power can be used responsibly. Mustang's arc is about reclaiming power from a corrupt system and using it to create real change. Scar too learns to channel his power into rebuilding rather than destroying. Ultimately, the series warns us that power is a double-edged sword. It amplifies who you already are. If you are selfish, it feeds your greed. If you are cruel, it fuels your violence. But if you have the courage to face the truth and act with integrity, power can also be a force for good. At the heart of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is a story about family and the bonds that keep people moving forward even in the darkest times. The most obvious example is of course Edward and Alphonse. Their relationship as brothers is the emotional core of the series. From the very beginning, everything they do is for each other. No matter how dangerous or impossible the journey becomes, they refuse to leave the other behind. Their bond shows that family isn't about perfection or even agreement. It's about sacrifice and unconditional support. Edward constantly risks his life for Elle, even giving up his arm and eventually his alchemy to restore his brother. And Alphonse, despite being trapped in an empty shell of a body, never lets himself despair as long as Ed is fighting by his side. But the story also shows that family isn't limited to blood. Characters like Winry and Pinnacle stand by the brothers through everything, offering them a home, a safe place to turn to, and the warmth they'd lost. Winry's care and quiet strength show that family can be found even in friends who choose to love you. Then there's Mustang and his team, who embody the idea of a chosen family. Together they face down impossible odds, take care of each other, and share a trust that goes beyond mere duty. Even Scar, who starts the story consumed by revenge, eventually finds new purpose in rebuilding his homeland and reconnecting to the culture and people he thought he'd lost forever. On the opposite end, we see what happens when family is twisted or destroyed. Fire rejects his children, the homunculi, using them as a tool rather than treating them as living beings. His inability to love or value others as family is what ultimately leads to his downfall. Redemption is one of the most poignant and deeply human themes of the series. The story is full of characters who have done terrible things, yet still choose to face their past and work towards making things right. Scar is one example. When we first met him, he was consumed by hatred, but by the end of the series, he chooses a different path and chooses to rebuild rather than destroy. Mustang also struggles with redemption. Haunted by the lives he took during the Ishval Civil War, he's determined to change the system that forced him to commit those atrocities. His guilt becomes his motivation to create a better world, one where no one has to carry the same burden he does. What makes the theme of redemption so powerful in Brotherhood is that it never pretends the past can be erased. The characters' mistakes stay with them, but by choosing to confront those mistakes, they prove that they are not defined by those mistakes. One of the most sobering themes of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is the danger of unchecked ambition and the limits of what humans should strive to achieve. The series is full of characters who reach too far, who ignore the natural order of things on their hunger for more. At the center of this is Father, who begins as a small powerless being trapped in a flask. His desire to escape his limitations drives him to manipulate homunculi and sacrifice an entire nation to gain a body. But even that isn't enough. His ambition grows and grows until he finally absorbs the power of God itself, only to be undone by his own arrogance. Father's downfall is a warning about what happens when ambition is divorced from morality. No matter how much power he gained, he could never feel the emptiness inside him. But what he sought, to become something beyond human, was impossible from the start. Edward and Alphonse's journey mirrors this theme on a more personal level. Their attempt to bring their mother back to life through human transmutation is their own act of hubris and unwillingness to accept death and the natural limits of human ability. They pay dearly for it and spend the rest of the series learning that some things simply cannot and should not be forced. Even Hohenheim learns this lesson. Despite his immense knowledge and long life, he comes to realize that the simple joys, a home, a family, are worth more than all the immorality and power in the world. The message isn't that ambition is bad. It's that ambition without morality, without understanding your own limits, can destroy you. There's nothing wrong with striving to improve, to change, to reach for something more. But the moment you begin to believe that you are above everyone else, or above the natural laws of the world, you've already lost yourself. In conclusion, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood isn't just a story about alchemy or adventure. It's a story about what it means to live, to love, to fall and to rise again. Everything we've explored, equivalent exchange, the value of humanity, the scars of war, the corrupting nature of power, the bonds of family, the search for redemption, and the limits of ambition and the power of sacrifice come together to create a narrative that speaks to something universal. It reminds us that life is messy, full of loss and pain, but also full of hope and connection. It shows us that even in a broken world, we can choose to be better, to love, to rebuild, and to give meaning to our struggles. That's why Brotherhood continues to resonate, because it reflects the best and the worst of ourselves and asks us what kind of person we want to be.